to go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to paint a bear familiar is what I called it, but it's exactly what it is a bear skin changer from the Song of Ice and Fire miniature game. I'm not too familiar with the lore of A Song of Ice and Fire, but as far as I know, a skin changer is a human who can change into an animal. So in this pack, you get a couple of humans and then some wolves, some bears, and some ravens, I think, or hawks maybe. But for now, we're just painting this bear, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start with a couple colors here. I'm going to start with Black Templar, Scigor Brown, and Wildwood. What's up? And so I'm just going to take these three colors that are, as you can see, they're sort of similar. And just to give our bear some overall impression of not being 100% the exact same color, as bears are not the exact same color, I'm just going to use these three colors to create sort of a patchwork pattern on the bear's fur. So I'm going to open all of them up at the same time and pray I do not knock them over at any point during this. We'll see. Knock on wood. There's some wood right here that you can't exactly see, but I'm knocking on it. All right. So then I'm basically just going to dip into one, put some paint down, dip into another, put some paint down, rinsing my brush off between each color. And yeah, we'll see how we do. So I'm going to start with, I'll start with the Black Templar. And I'm not really going to be specific about where any of this goes. Just going to lay some patches down. Some can be big, some can be small. Doesn't really matter. And I'm trying to not get them symmetrical, so if I do a patch here, I don't want to do another patch right there. Maybe offset a patch down here somewhere. Continue the patch under this strap he has here. Maybe one up here. And one here. That'll do one on his foot down here. Maybe right there. Alright, so there's the black. I'm going to leave the black open in case I have to come back to it. But now I'm going to take the Wildwood. This is the lighter of our two browns. And I'm just going to, right up against where the black is, I'm just going to sort of blend that in with the black. Doesn't have to be blending in with every black patch, but at least some to give some idea that these colors are sort of melding into each other in patches. I have no idea if this is going to look good, by the way. This is the first time I've done something like this on a furry creature. I've done this before on animals with skin and animals that normally look good, like two tones that are, or multiple tones that are drastically different. I've never done it on something like this before, though, so we'll see. Worst comes to worst, I'll just paint over it. Looks like a Dalmatian. Yeah, it sort of does, at least after that first step. We will try to correct that. Alright, so now I'm actually going to put a little bit more of this in here, right up here maybe. So now we're going to take our third color, which is Scigor Brown. I can actually close these because I can reopen them in a second if I need them. Give this a shake since it's been sitting for a second. So now we're going to do the Scigor Brown, and I'm just going to cover basically every other patch of fur that isn't already covered. And make sure to blend into those two colors here. And this, hopefully, is when we should start to see this technique come to life. Looking at them against the primer color is always going to make them look a little weird and too patchworky. But hopefully, as we get rid of this primer color more and more, it'll start to work better. And the way I'm blending this is pretty simple. I'm not doing anything too ridiculous. I'm just basically, because this paint is also wet and it'll stay wet for a while, I'm just putting it down on this and then just moving my brush up into the other colors, so that there's a little bit of a transition between each one. And as you can see, I'm not brushing the paint on. I'm sort of just wiggling my brush, sort of stippling, sort of haphazardly wiggling the brush around, just so I don't get those lines between color that I'm trying to avoid. There still will be some, but we can hopefully go back and fix those later with some dry brushing that will sort of tie it all together. And if I happen to just completely go over a patch of the other colors with this, it's not a big deal. And I'm going to obviously come back and paint all his claws and his details on his face and the strap around his neck and all that. But for now, just want to get this color laid down. Mostly, since we're in a stream scenario here, mostly I want to get it laid down so I can let it start drying. This is going to be quite a thing to get this dried. I don't love using the hairdryer on stream just because it's loud, I'm sure, for the viewers. But if I have to, I will. Hopefully I don't have to. Alright, so now I'm just going to go through, and sometimes contrast paint can leave, like the surface tension was just a little too strong for that area, and it'll pull back off of an area. And it'll usually be a really small area, like you'll just see a little dot of the primer. And I'm just making sure to go back over any of those so that they aren't showing up. Like right here is a good example. Not sure if we can see that. Yeah, here we go. Right there. Right where the tip of my brush is right here, there's a little white dot of primer. And that's from the surface tension of the contrast paint pulling it, basically pulling, trying to bead and exposing that little bit of primer. So we want to just make sure that we get all those, because random super white patches like that on a bear would look strange if he's going to be this color. If he was a polar bear, then fine, but he's not a polar bear, so. Is he wearing a scarf? Dapper bear. I'm not exactly sure what it is. So, like I said, the unit for the game is called the Skin Changers, and it comes with some humans and some animals. And so I had assumed that, based on the name Skin Changer, the humans changed into animals and then fought. But this sort of looks like a harness that you'd like have on an animal, like a leash almost. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with him. Actually, since I was just talking about drying time, I'll go grab the box that this guy is from, and I'll read the little blurb about the lore of him while you watch paint dry. Woo! Just got here. Why the bear? The bear. Well, I mean, besides the fact that I wanted to paint a bear, so because bear is perfectly accurate. But the paint challenge today, which I didn't actually mention, the Advent Paint Challenge is going on, and today's is to paint a miniature who is on a base larger than 32 millimeters. And so here's a 32 millimeter base. I think we can all agree the bear's base is larger than that. All right, so here's the box that this guy came in. Skin Changers. You see we got some dudes, some bears, a wolf down there, a guy with a wolf pelt, a hawk or an eagle. So let's read the little blurb here. Here we go. Skin changers fight not with steel and iron, but through tooth, talon, and claw. A skin changer's beasts go to war with all the animal cunning the creature possesses, guided by the human intelligence riding along in its mind. If free folk rank are bolstered by direwolves, eagles, and even huge northern bears, know that a skin changer lurks somewhere nearby. Even if the beast is killed, the skin changer themselves is not defeated. Okay, interesting. So it's not that they're changing into these animals. It's that they're basically like using them as Jay Sully avatar bodies. They're like back at home base controlling the beast in battle, but they're safe. Very interesting. Not sure the word skin changer really... Well, no, maybe that actually does. The mind pops between the different skins of the animal or the human. Okay, I can dig it. Our paint absolutely isn't dry now, but I have nothing else to say about this unit, so we're going to go back to this guy. Yeah, he's definitely not dry, but I'm liking how he's looking. With a couple dry brushes, I think the patchwork will all come together and he will look like he's got several different color furs in him. Yeah, they should telepathically control them like puppets. Yeah, that does seem to be how it is. Very interesting. But it's almost not quite, I guess, telepathically control them. It's like they jump their mind into the mind of the animal. So they are the animal, basically. As opposed to just acting out what they're doing. But yeah, very interesting. Yeah, maybe not safe back at base, but at least in the rear ranks. Yeah, you're probably right about that. All right, so now I'm going to paint the leash, the harness, the whatever this is. ID tag. I'm going to paint that in Gorthor Brown. If you don't have a pot of Gorthor Brown... Ooh, this pot's dead. If you don't have a pot of Gorthor Brown, I suggest picking one up. It could prove useful in the future. You never know when you might have a pot of Gorthor Brown that someone requires you to pick up and use, or who knows. So I'm just going to paint... I think this thing up top here is metal attached to the piece of leather, but I'm just going to paint the whole thing like leather and then come back and go from there. H3AR, that's his ID. That would be hilarious. I don't know what alphabet the free folk use. I'm guessing they don't have much use for numbers, but I could be wrong. So I'm doing my best not to hit any of this contrast paint that we've put on before. And so it keeps drying. I can see it's only wet in the deepest recesses in a lot of places now, so might be able to do a quick hair dry and then start dry brushing. We'll see. This Gorthor Brown will dry much faster, so maybe we can just fully detail out the scarf ID leash name tag thing and then go back to the fur. Oh, I could actually do the claws and stuff on the bear too, because even if that's not completely dry, I could just paint over it. Wouldn't be the end of the world. Really, Greg? That's going to be an advent challenge? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not giving away any advent challenges before they happen. That would be pretty funny if it was one, though. At least it isn't Seafoam Green. Dylan's not even here. I messaged him. I'm like, hey, stream start in 20 minutes. Just because then he feels like he's obligated to join, even if he's busy. But he didn't join this time, so I guess he's over that obligation. Took about 3 episodes. Oh, well. You know what would be even funnier, Peyton? Is if not only if I made Gorthor Brown an advent challenge, but if I made it on a day that the shop was closed, so that if you didn't already own Gorthor Brown, you couldn't go and purchase some to complete the challenge. That would be pretty funny, huh? Something to consider maybe for next time. I think I'll put that up after the stream as a quote of the stream, just so everyone gets the same information. Not that it might be useful to them, just so I think it'd be interesting for them all to hear. I mean, mean would be a word, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's fine. That would be great. Yeah, wouldn't it, John? That would be a pretty good idea, huh? It's too bad I've already planned all this month's challenges out. Can't change them now. Good thing I'm down here in Valdosta. Yeah, it's true. There could be another store where you could procure that. Perhaps. All right. And this, again, this is what I'm talking about right here. As we're drying, right there is a spot of primer where the paint tried to bead and pulled away from that little spot right there. So I need to fix that. I'm going to fix that with some wildwood. Good thing I own it in most colors already. Yeah, everyone should own Gorthor Brown. It's the best paint in the world. And Clark Ward's not here, so I'll fill in for him. But it protects against airstrikes. Confirmed. And the reason we know that is because no one who has ever been airstruck has ever had a pot of Gorthor Brown in their paint, in their pocket. Never. It is the Gorthor Brown Anti-Airstrike Committee's opinion that anyone who is worth being the target of an airstrike is worried about bigger things than painting little plastic toy soldiers. We could be wrong, and we're willing to accept that we're wrong as soon as someone provides us evidence of Gorthor Brown being in the pocket of someone who was airstruck. Airstriked? Airstruck? I don't know what the correct term should be. I'm going to go with airstruck. Can't argue with that. Exactly. It's unarguable. All right, so I'm going to take Rakarth Flesh. And I'm going to paint the talons, the claws. And I'm going to be very careful not to hit this brown that's still drying. Aside from Null Noel, I don't actually use GW paints. Just grab tubes from Michaels or Hobby Lobby. Yeah, I mean, whatever works. Nothing wrong with that. I personally prefer Citadel paint just because it's what I grew up with and it's what I've been using and used to. But don't ever let someone tell you you're using the wrong paint. They could tell you some good tips or some good advice about other paints, but don't ever let someone tell you you're using the wrong paint. Use whatever paint you want. I exclusively use GW paint when smothering my models. Yeah, there you go. I won't say exclusively because I do have other brands scattered around, but I would say usually I'm using 100% Citadel colors. But I do have many other brands that sometimes sneak a couple in there. Painting some teeth here. These models are a bit softer plastic than the GW plastic, so their details are not as well defined. Normally on a bear this size, for like GW plastic, you'd see defined canines here, but not in this case, but that's okay. Put some teeth in there. He does have a little bit of a canine sticking down, but on a GW model, you know, the canine would be like that freaking long. And I suppose these guys are, they're not heroic scale, they're more true scale. If you look at the difference here between, like, the size of the wrists and the size of the head. Like, this guy has a full plate mail suit on, and his wrist is still smaller than this guy's wrist, so... I wanted to use GW paints. They were just too rich for my blood to swap from my acrylics. And like you grew up with Citadel, I grew up with acrylics. Yeah, hey, I mean, no one can say that buying this versus buying just acrylic paints from a craft or hobby store is less expensive. These are quite a lot of dollar per ounce when compared to craft store or hobby store paints, for sure. All right, what am I going to do? I'm going to paint the... I'm going to keep doing some details on this name tag, scarf, ID badge, whatever it is thing here. I'm going to use some Grey Knight Steel. I'm not going to use Grey Knight Steel, actually. I'm going to use Ironbreaker. This guy is part of the Free Folk army, and all my other Free Folk stuff has Ironbreaker on it. So I'll keep that theme for the army going, and I'll use Ironbreaker. Just going to get these couple little spots. These little, like, buckles or loops or whatever they are. However, I'm pretty much Null Oil Wazik. I have yet to find a better shade. Yeah, Null Oil is awesome. I don't know if Wazik is a word that I don't know, or if it's an autocorrect, or what. Maybe it's an autocorrect of a word I don't know. Double whammy. Alright. I think I'm going to do the rim of this as if it's made of metal. I'm just being very careful not to hit the fur. Metal bears would be a pretty awesome thing in a fantasy universe, but in our case, these bears are made of skin and bone like the normal bears. Wazik equals idiot or fool. Okay, good to know. Not an autocorrect, but a term or a word I was not familiar with. Alright, I think that's all the metal on this guy. So now I'm going to paint the inside of his mouth. Get that a little pink. And... color am I going to do that in? I'm going to do that actually. I'm going to do that in a brown color. Things you pick up from Total War Warhammer. Yeah, that's fair. Scigor Brown. Paint the inside of his mouth, and then I'm going to go back over it with a contrast pink in a second. And that combination of pink and brown should give us a good color. I'm also going to do the inside of his ears in this color, but I'm not going to go over at that with the pink. Just going to put that in there. Alright, and then I'm going to take some black, some layer black as opposed to contrast black, and I'm just going to do his nose, his lips, and his eyes. So get his nose right here. Good. And a bit more of his nose there. And then his lips here. I was looking at bears, and I was surprised at how much of a defined lip they have. Wasn't expecting to see that. I don't know if I've ever really studied what a bear looks like up close, though. And then I'm just going to put 2 little dots in for his eyes. If you notice here, when I do eyes, I've done it a couple times on stream, but I've never explained it. I'll go in there and I'll start moving my brush, and the first couple times I move it, I'm not actually putting any paint down, and then I'll go in and actually do it. But this sort of, I think of it like when golfers go up to a tee and they swing next to the ball to get the motion going. Sort of like that. I'm just doing the same motion over and over, and then I'll just slightly lean my brush in and do a swipe in the exact same motion I've just done like 12 times. And hopefully that will mean I'll get a nice crisp spot of color where I actually want it. Alright, so now as the paint dries, you can really start to see that the patchwork is starting to work well. I'm going to put some... I'm going to take some Dark Oath Flesh. I don't know why I call it Dark Oath. Dark Oath Flesh. And put it on the leather on here. They have long lips. You can see that when they roar sometimes. Yeah, I was looking at some pictures of some grizzly bears, and they've got quite a lip. And so I'm doing this contrast paint over the leather and the metal. And this is just going to give us sort of a all at once. It'll weather the metal a little bit. Make it look like it's worn down or there's some dirt on it or something. And it'll also shade the leather for us. Alrighty. There's that. I think we're about ready to dry brush now. So, I'm going to do a 2-tone dry brush on both halves of him. I want his underside to be lighter than the rest of him. So for his belly, I'm going to do Xandri Dust first, and then Rakarth Flesh in a 2-toned. And then on his back, I'm going to do... I've lost it. I'm going to do Dryad Bark, followed by Steel Legion Drab. Help it blend a bit. Yep, you got it. All right, so I'm going to start on his back, and that's just basically going to be everywhere that's not his underside. I'm actually going to do his underside first so I can see where those lines are. So I'm going to take this, and this is going to be halfway between a dry brush and an overbrush. I say that a lot when I dry brush, but a true dry brush is a rare thing for me. A lot of the time I am overbrushing when I say I'm dry brushing. So I'm just going to take this, and the grain of the fur is this way, going down. So I'm going to move my brush up so I catch all the the lines of it. And I'm just going to do this on his chest and on his belly. And then down here on the insides of his legs here. And then underneath his arms. So just right here. That looks good to me. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the dryad bark. But that's going to be everywhere else. Get most of it off. And this may not look like it's doing much right off the bat. But it'll just help to unify all of the 3 different colors that we have in our fur. It'll make the brown a little bit darker. It'll make the black a little bit browner. It'll just sort of meld it all in together. Some more paint on the brush here. And basically I'm just going to be careful. The only places I'm not going to do this are the places that I've already applied the lighter color. Alrighty. Then I'm going to get my other brush and I'm going to move to my darker, or my lighter 2 colors rather. So I'm going to do Rakarth Flesh on his belly and chest. And this is going to be a true dry brush. I'm going to get as much paint off this as possible. And then just come in and lighten up this area. And I'm going to get his face too, just because we want people to be drawn to his face. Make sure it's on camera. Just going to lighten up his whole face like this. There we go. Alright, and then I'm going to take my Xandri, or Steel Legion Drab rather, which is the lighter of the darker dry brushes I'm doing. And just come in and dry brush this everywhere we put that darker brown. Put some of this on his head also. Make sure to get his arms. His legs here. Feet. Alright, and now he looks like a bear. At least I think he looks like a bear. Oh, the pixelation. Sometimes the pixelation just happens. I have not been able to figure out why. It'll be there for a bit and then it'll go away. Sometimes it won't happen for like 12 episodes straight, and then sometimes it'll happen 2 streams in a row. It is not only you, though, and I don't know why it happens. It doesn't ever stay very long, so I've kind of just been ignoring it because it doesn't happen all the time or for very often, but I'm just going to take some Xandri dust and do a little bit of edge highlight on this scarf thing here. Not on all the edges, just on some of the edges that are very visible. Right there and here maybe. And then I think at the bottom here. That should be good. Alright, then I'm just going to put that pink that I talked about in his mouth, and then I will do the base and we'll call it a day. Yeah, that's the problem. It doesn't ever stay long enough for me to like diagnose it, so it could be on my end, it could be on Facebook's end. I don't know. The only thing I do know is that it's not like an individual viewer problem, because multiple viewers have said they've seen it, and I see it on my the stream that I have up so I can see the chat. I see it on there, which is on an external device. So it's definitely something is going on. I just haven't been able to figure out what. I'm going to put a tiny little dot of white on his eyes just to give some life in the eye sockets here. There we go. Probably won't be able to see this on stream, but there's one. I gotta make this one a little bit stronger. There we go. Now he's got at least a little bit of glint in his eye or something, so that he actually looks like he's not just taxidermy. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the base. And all my other free folk stuff, which this guy is a part of, is this sort of autumn leaf base. My thought was that they're tramping through a forest that is in the middle of fall, and there's leaves all over the ground and stuff. So that's the kind of base I'm going to do real quick. It's 3 easy steps. One of the steps you repeat, but tell you what, you can send it to me, then I'll be able to really appreciate your work. Alrighty, so I'm just going to take this Scigor Brown and coat the entire base. And this Scigor Brown we're putting down is going to be used like glue, essentially. As the paint dries, anything that's embedded in the paint will dry right along with it. So in this case, just make sure we have some good puddles here. In this case, what's going to be stuck in our paint is going to be some leaves. So I've got some dark autumn leaf scatter here in a bag. I'm just gonna take my miniature. Make sure your miniature is dry if you're gonna do this, by the way. The only thing that should be wet is the paint on his base. So I'm just gonna stick it in the bag here, rustle it around in there, get a good coverage. Make sure it's got some small leaves, some big leaves. Good mixture. So we'll pull that out. I'll make sure the stuff that's loose comes off, and it did. This is still very delicate right now. If I were to just wipe my finger across it, it would take all the leaves right off. But once it dries, it'll be much stronger. So now we're going to go back and repeat the step I was talking about. Take some more Scigor Brown and just dot it around. This will pick up some of the current leaves. It's not a problem. Just wipe them off. This will go down on top of some of the other leaves, giving us some added texture, so that's always nice. But as you can see, it'll pick up some of the leaves. Just wipe them off, and it's not a big deal. Just put a couple patches scattered around a couple places. That looks good. Maybe one more right here. That looks good. Then I have some slightly, I guess, yellower autumn scatter. I'm just going to do the exact same thing I just did. Stick it in here. Swish it around a little bit. Get some of that up there. Get all the excess off. So there we go. Now we have a base that has 2 tones of leaves. Super quick, super simple, but especially when it's a bunch of guys all lined up, it'll look fine as a basing scheme. So then I'm just going to go back to the same Scigor Brown and do the base rim. And if there happen to be any leaves stuck to the base rim where you got your original color onto the base rim a little bit, just knock them off on your way around. Like, for instance, right here. Just grab them off, or in that case, knock it back up onto the base. Not a problem. And there you go. And now, after about maybe 45 minutes or so, that will all be completely hardened down, and your leaves won't go anywhere. You can spray some sealer on top of these leaves if you want them to really stick. I just leave it, though, because the only way I'm ever picking these miniatures up is either by the miniature itself or by the rim of the base. I'm never, like, grabbing the miniature like this. If you are going to grab the miniature like this, your leaves will come off if you're not very gentle. So if you're going to pick them up like that for some reason, then I would spray some sealer down on top of this. The simplest sealer is just some white glue, like tacky glue, and water. Mix those together and just put it down. You can also just use that stuff to apply the basing. I do this just so I don't have to mix glue and water on stream. I can just pull a pot of paint out, put it down, and then we're done. But yeah, there are absolutely some different ways that this can be applied. My technique is similar. Elmer's glue, then shake in some rock dust. Yep, there you go. Elmer's glue and go to town. Absolutely. Yep, clear coat spray paint is also fine. I generally don't like to risk spraying clear coat like that because I don't want it to do anything to my other colors on the miniature. On a bear like this, it wouldn't be a problem, but sometimes clear coats can interact with different colors different ways, so I like to avoid that where possible. But yeah, there's our bear. He's got a good mottled tone to his fur, I think. Doesn't just look monochromatic. He's got a relatively simple base, but one that will look pretty good, I think, especially all lined up next to each other. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode. I'll be back on the main Galactic page on Wednesday, painting something. I'm not sure what yet. Maybe another miniature from this game. We'll see. And then Friday, I will be painting this thing, which I'll pull out real quick. It's an old dwarf special edition figure, which is two dwarves holding a third dwarf up on a shield. Assuming I can get him built and ready to go, that's what I'll be painting on Friday. If not, I might have to push him to a later date, but that's the plan anyway. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and I will see you next time.